The sun hung low over the Nevada desert, sharp and blinding, painting the world in gold and heat. Dust rolled across the firing range like breath over glass, and the smell of oil, metal, and scorched sand hung heavy in the air. Commander Rains stood with his arms folded, boots planted in the grit, watching his team of Navy SEALs set up for the day's qualification drills. Every man there had endured years of training, countless missions, and the kind of silence that followed violence. They didn't rattle easily, but today they were uneasy. They had been told a visitor was coming, someone clear by command, someone special. The convoy approaching in the distance didn't look special. It looked wrong. The Humvee rattled to a stop near the firing tables, engine coughing out dust. The door swung open, and a boy stepped out. He couldn't have been older than 12. His uniform sleeves hung past his hands. His boots were a size too big, and yet he carried himself with an odd composure, chin level, gaze steady. The chatter among the operators died instantly. Dalton, the senior chief, broke the silence with a low laugh. "You've got to be kidding me. That's our guest." Rains didn't answer. He watched the boy walk across the sand, small footprints trailing behind him like faint punctuation marks. "Name's Eli Ward," Rains finally said, cleared by the director himself. The name drew a few murmurs. Ward. It was familiar, heavy with memory. Marcus Ward had been one of their own, sniper, strategist, and legend. Killed in Kandahar 3 years ago, saving his unit from an ambush. No one had ever forgotten the story or the man. Eli stopped in front of them and offered a small, awkward salute. "Permission to observe, sir." Dalton snorted. "Observe? You can barely hold a rifle." Rains shot him a warning look. "That's enough." He turned back to the boy. "You're welcome to observe, but stay behind the line. These weapons aren't toys." Eli nodded, though his eyes weren't on Rains. They were fixed on the long-barreled rifles arranged neatly on the tables. He stepped closer, curiosity unmasked, gaze moving from the suppressors to the bipods to the optics. "Barrett MRAD," he said softly. .338 Lapua Magnum. Wind correction's usually a problem with those scopes, right? Several heads turned. Dalton smirked, sensing an opening. "You read that somewhere, kid?" Eli looked up at him. "I noticed your sight alignment's off. The reticle's about half a degree high. That'll pull your shots right, especially at distance." A few of the men chuckled. Dalton's grin faltered, but his pride wouldn't let it go. "You're saying I can't shoot?" "I'm saying your rifle can't," Eli replied simply. The laughter stopped. Dalton's face darkened, but Rains interjected. "Relax, Chief. He's just talking." Yet something about the boy's calm tone unsettled him. He wasn't bluffing. He was certain. The drills began. One by one, the SEALs took their turns, controlled breathing, measured squeezes, steady hits. The air filled with the rhythm of precision, the crack of rifles echoing off the sand. When it was over, the targets displayed tight clusters, each man competing to shave off millimeters. Dalton shot last, landing near-perfect scores, though one shot veered wide. Right exactly as Eli had said it would. The chief's jaw tightened. "All right, genius," he called out. "You think you can do better? Show me." Rain started to object, but Eli had already stepped forward. "One shot," he said, voice quiet but steady. "Then I'll stop." He climbed onto the stool behind Dalton's rifle, the weapon almost comically oversized in his hands. Yet his movements were precise, practiced, not hesitant. He adjusted the bipod, checked the scope alignment, and leaned in, cheek pressed to the stock. His breathing slowed until the world seemed to narrow around him. The operators exchanged skeptical looks. The boy looked too small, too young, too calm. Then, crack. The sound cracked, opened the stillness. The spotter blinked at his tablet, then looked up sharply. Bullseye. Dead center. Eli didn't move. He reloaded and fired again. Another perfect hit. A third. A fourth. The shots landed in identical points. No variance. No hesitation. It was surgical. By the 10th round, no one was speaking. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Finally, Eli lifted his head, blinking as if surfacing from underwater. "The barrel's drifting a little from the heat," he said, almost apologetically. Dalton stepped closer, his disbelief flickering into something else, wariness. Who taught you to shoot like that? Eli looked down at the rifle, fingers tracing the cool metal. My dad, he said quietly. He said the world talks if you listen long enough. Rains exhaled slowly, the words tugging at something deep in memory. Marcus Ward had said almost the same thing once, on a mission in the mountains, when the wind had shifted and saved them all. He studied the boy, searching for traces of the man he'd lost. Eli, Rains said carefully, you've got talent, but there's more to shooting than hitting targets. It's about control, patience. Eli met his gaze. I know. It's about knowing where something will be before it gets there. The words landed like a stone dropped in water, rippling through the silence. Dalton looked uneasy now. That's not normal, he muttered. Rains ignored him. He crouched beside the boy, his voice low. You've got a gift, but gifts can be dangerous if people don't understand them. You understand? Eli nodded, though his eyes remained on the horizon. I understand, but sometimes people only believe after they see. The commander straightened, unsettled by the certainty in his tone. He didn't know if he was talking about shooting or something larger. The air between them felt charged, humming with quiet tension. Rains finally said, That's enough for today. Eli stood, brushing dust from his sleeves, and turned toward the waiting Humvee. The operators watched him go, silent now, expressions unreadable. Dalton muttered something under his breath, but no one laughed. Rains stayed behind, staring at the targets downrange. Every hole was perfect, identical. Too perfect. He'd seen great shooters before, legends, but never anything like that. As the boy disappeared into the heat shimmer, Rains felt a prickle of unease. Whatever this was, it wasn't luck, and it wasn't just talent. It was something else entirely, something that didn't belong in the realm of training or chance. He took a slow breath, eyes fixed on the fading horizon. Who are you, kid? He murmured to himself. And though the wind gave no answer, it carried the echo of the boy's voice, soft, certain, and impossible to forget. The briefing room felt colder than the range had been, though the air conditioning hummed low and steady. Commander Rain sat at the far end of the table, a file open before him. The boy's name, Eli Ward, stamped in bold letters across the top. Around him, 3 men from Naval Intelligence and 1 civilian scientist whispered among themselves, their voices a low murmur of disbelief. On the monitor behind them, footage replayed in slow motion. Eli's perfect shots, each bullet landing with surgical precision. The scientist, Dr. Niles, leaned forward. That level of correction isn't human reflex, he said flatly. It's prediction. He's compensating before environmental data stabilizes. He's acting on information he shouldn't yet have. Rains rubbed the bridge of his nose. You're saying he's guessing? Not guessing, Niles replied. Knowing. The word lingered uneasily. Across the table, one of the intelligence officers, Lang, tapped a finger against the desk. Sir, that boy shouldn't exist. Rains looked up sharply. Explain. Lang hesitated, glancing toward the civilian. He's connected to a project that was buried years ago. DARPA ran a human optimization initiative, Project EIDOLON. They were testing predictive cognitive frameworks. Soldiers who could anticipate combat variables faster than any computer. Rains frowned. And you think Eli's part of that? I know he is, Lang said. His father was one of the test subjects. Marcus Ward. He volunteered for the early trials. The commander sat back, jaw tightening. Marcus Ward died, saving 6 men in Kandahar. That's the record I know. Niles nodded slowly. He did. But before he deployed, he authorized one more experiment, prenatal adaptation. They wanted to see if the neurological imprint could transfer genetically. The project shut down before results were ever documented. The room fell silent. Rains looked again at the boy's face frozen on the screen, focused still, eerily calm. He remembered the line Eli had spoken. It's just math. You just have to listen. Does he know? Rains asked quietly. Niles shook his head. Doubtful. He's probably experiencing sensory input in a way he can't articulate. His perception runs faster than ours. He doesn't see what's happening. He sees what's about to. Outside, a soft knock interrupted the tension. The door opened, and Eli stepped in, escorted by Dalton. The chief's earlier bravado was gone, replaced by something close to caution. "Sir, you asked for him," Dalton said. Rains nodded. "Thanks, Chief." He motioned for Eli to sit. The boy obeyed, folding his hands on the table. His posture was careful, deliberate, like a student at attention. "Eli," Rains began, keeping his tone even, "we've been reviewing your performance. You're aware that what you did isn't ordinary." The boy looked down, silent for a long moment. "I didn't mean to make anyone angry," he said finally. "No one's angry," Rains replied. "We just want to understand. How did you learn to shoot like that?" Eli's brow furrowed. "My dad used to take me to the range. He said it wasn't about hitting the target. It was about knowing where it would be when you fired. The air tells you, if you pay attention." Dr. Niles leaned forward, curiosity overcoming restraint. "Can you describe what you feel before you take a shot?" Eli hesitated. "It's like everything slows down. The wind bends, the dust shifts, and I can see where things will land. It's not magic. It's just there, waiting to be seen." Rains watched him closely. There was no arrogance in the boy's voice, only quiet conviction. He wasn't boasting. He was describing a reality invisible to everyone else. Lang whispered something to Niles, who nodded grimly. Rains caught it anyway, Neuralink resonance. He'd had enough of the murmuring. "Whatever theory you have, save it," Rains said sharply. "This is a child, not a weapon." Dalton shifted uncomfortably behind the boy. "With respect, sir, that's not how the brass will see it. Word's spreading already. Every sniper unit's talking about him. They'll want to test him again." Eli looked up, his expression tightening. "I don't want to be tested," he said softly. Rains met his gaze. There was fear there, not of failure, but of being seen too clearly. "You won't be," Rains said. "Not if I can help it." Niles exhaled, his tone almost pleading. "Commander, you can't hide this. If he's what we think he is, his brain could change everything we know about human computation. We're talking about predictive processing, biological foresight. Do you understand what that means?" "I understand exactly what that means," Rains said. "It means another kid loses his childhood because a bunch of scientists can't see past their data." The silence that followed was thick. Eli watched them all, his eyes scanning their faces like he was reading something unseen. Finally, he whispered, "You're scared." Rains turned to him. "Of what?" "Of what happens if I'm real," Eli said simply. Dalton swallowed hard. "You're damn right about that." Rains dismissed the room with a curt gesture. The others filed out reluctantly, their whispers trailing behind. When the door shut, only he and Eli remained. "You know, your father saved my life once," Rains said. "He used to say the trick to surviving wasn't strength. It was seeing the moment before it happened. Guess he passed that on." Eli tilted his head. "He told me the same thing." Rains studied him for a long moment, then leaned forward. "Listen, kid, whatever they say about you, remember this. You're not a project. You're a person. Don't let them convince you otherwise." Eli's lips curved into the faintest smile. "That's what Dad said too." Outside, the sun had slipped below the horizon, and the desert had turned to shadow. The hum of the base lights filled the silence. Rains walked him to the door, pausing before opening it. "Tomorrow, they'll want to see more. You don't owe them anything, understood?" Eli nodded once. "But if they ask," he said quietly, "I'll show them anyway." Rains frowned. "Why?" The boy's answer was steady calm. "Because if I don't, they'll keep guessing. And when people guess, they make mistakes." For the first time, Rains felt a flicker of unease. Not about what Eli could do, but about how effortlessly he seemed to understand human fear. As the door closed behind the boy, Rains stood alone in the dim light, staring at the empty chair where Eli had sat. The world suddenly felt smaller, as if something vast and invisible had just shifted beneath its surface. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but he knew one thing with certainty. The boy's story was far from over. The dawn broke sharp and colorless over the desert, the kind of morning that felt scraped clean of sound. Commander Rains stood at the edge of the range, a coffee gone cold in his hand, watching engineers set up the new course. The air was filled with quiet urgency, tripods, sensors, ballistic monitors, and a target so distant it might as well have been on another planet. The boy was late, though Rains suspected that was deliberate. Everyone wanted him to show up. Everyone also feared what would happen when he did. When the Humvee finally appeared on the horizon, the technicians fell silent. Eli stepped out without a word, his uniform neater this time, though the sleeves were still too long. His eyes flicked over the equipment, the rows of men, the distant target, taking it all in with that same unsettling composure. Rains met him halfway. "You sure about this, son?" he asked quietly. Eli nodded once. "They said it's the last one." Rains's expression hardened. "They say a lot of things." He glanced toward the observation deck, where suits from Washington waited behind mirror glass. "They call this trial the Hollow Wind. No one's ever hit the target. Not once." The boy looked out across the dunes. "Then it's just waiting for someone who can." Rains almost smiled. The confidence wasn't arrogance. It was something else, something deeper. The boy didn't believe he could hit the target. He already knew he would. Technicians handed over the rifle, a modified anti-material platform built for extreme range. The scope shimmered faintly in the sunlight, calibrated for 3 miles of atmospheric distortion. Eli ran his fingers along the barrel, murmuring something under his breath, almost like a prayer. Then he lay down behind the weapon, settling into position. The wind shifted. Sand hissed across the range. Rain stepped back, folding his arms. A spotter beside him muttered readings under his breath. Crosswind 20 knots, temperature 92 degrees, humidity low. The data didn't matter. No computer could predict wind like this. But Eli wasn't a computer. He exhaled slowly, steady as a metronome. The range fell silent. Even the air seemed to pause. Then the boy's eyes changed, his pupils constricting, focus narrowing until there was only one line of motion, one invisible path threading the horizon. He pulled the trigger. The recoil thundered through the ground. A second passed, then another. The spotter's monitor blinked, searching for impact data. When the screen resolved, no one spoke. The round had hit dead center, 3 miles out, through wind and heat distortion, a perfect strike. Someone whispered a curse. Another whispered, "That's impossible." Eli rose slowly, blinking as though waking from a dream. "It wasn't impossible," he said softly. "Just complicated." The suits from the observation deck descended, their polished shoes kicking up sand. Dr. Niles was among them, carrying a clipboard he barely looked at. "Extraordinary," he said, eyes gleaming. "You've done what no one else could." Eli stepped back, uncertain. "It's not a trick," he said. "You asked me to shoot, so I did." Niles smiled, the kind of smile that never reached the eyes. "You've done more than shoot, Eli. You've changed everything we thought we knew about human potential. With training, we could replicate." "Enough," Rains cut in. His voice cracked through the air. "He's a kid, not your test subject." Niles turned to him. "You don't understand, Commander. His neural pattern isn't just faster, it's predictive. He's seeing probability as certainty. Do you realize the military implications?" "I realize you're trying to turn a child into a weapon," Rains said coldly. Eli stood between them, his expression tightening. "You're both wrong," he said quietly. "I don't see probability. I just see what's already there." The words hung heavy. Rains felt a chill run down his spine. Niles stared as if he'd just heard a foreign language. "Already there?" Eli nodded. "Everything happens before it happens. People just notice late." Rains stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You don't have to do this again. Not for them." But Eli's eyes stayed fixed on the target. "It's not for them." He turned, gaze unwavering. "It's for Dad." He said the world always pushes until someone pushes back. Rains wanted to argue, but the conviction in the boy's tone stopped him. He saw Marcus Ward in that look. The same quiet defiance, the same refusal to be defined by fear. Behind them, the technicians began disassembling the rig. The suits were already making calls, their voices clipped with excitement. Rains ignored them. He knelt beside Eli and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Listen to me. Whatever they decide, you've got a choice. Don't forget that." Eli looked up at him. "Do I?" Rains hesitated. The question wasn't rhetorical. It was a warning. Later, in the commander's quarters, the boy sat alone at the window, staring into the growing twilight. The desert stretched endless and quiet, the same landscape his father had trained on years before. He traced invisible lines in the air with one finger. Angles, trajectories, possibilities. Rains entered quietly, setting a small envelope on the table. "It's a copy of your father's service record," he said. "Thought you should have it." Eli picked it up, turning it over carefully. "Was he like me?" Rains shook his head. "No one's like you, Eli. But he believed in the same thing you do. That people can be better than what they're told to be." The boy looked back out the window. "Then maybe that's what I'll be." The lights dimmed. Somewhere outside, an aircraft hummed low, fading into the horizon. Rains joined him at the window, both of them silent for a long time. "They'll want to study you," Rains said finally. "They'll tell you it's for progress. Don't let them take away your voice." Eli's reflection met his in the glass, calm, older than his years. "They can't take what they don't understand." Rains almost smiled. "You sound like your father." Eli didn't answer. He rose, slipping the envelope into his jacket, and walked toward the door. "Where are you going?" Rains asked. "Home," the boy said simply. Rains knew he wouldn't stop him. Some things didn't need permission. As the door closed behind Eli, the commander turned back to the window. On the distant range, a single light blinked from the target's sight, steady, unwavering. By morning, the brass would call it a miracle. The scientists would call it evolution. But Rains understood it differently. It wasn't a weapon that had been born in that desert. It was something rarer, something untamed, the proof that the human spirit could still surprise the world. He took a deep breath, watching the dawn begin again, and whispered to the empty room, "Guess the world's still got a few miracles left."